The sun hung high in the sky, beating down on the sprawling suburban neighborhood. The sound of children laughing and splashing in water filled the air, a symphony of summer that radiated from the community pool. Devin King wiped the sweat from his brow as he followed his daughter, Maya, through the pool's gates. "Daddy, hurry up!" Maya called over her shoulder, her braids bouncing as she skipped ahead. She wore a bright yellow swimsuit dotted with sunflowers, her favorite. "I'm coming, princess," Devin replied with a grin, balancing a bag full of towels, sunscreen, and snacks. At 33, Devin was the picture of strength, lean, muscular, and radiating the quiet confidence that came from years of MMA training. But beneath his tough exterior was a heart that melted every time Maya flashed her gap-toothed smile. She was his world, his reason for pushing through the challenges of single fatherhood. As they reached the pool, Devin spread a towel on a lounge chair and settled in, watching Maya run to the edge of the shallow end. She dipped her toes in the water, squealing at the chill before easing herself in. "Be careful," Devin called out, his protective instincts kicking in. "I'm fine, Daddy," Maya said, paddling around with an exaggerated flourish. Devin chuckled and leaned back, letting the warmth of the sun seep into his skin. For the first time in weeks, he felt a sense of peace. Devin's peace was short-lived. As Maya splashed in the shallow end, an unmistakable figure entered the pool area. Officer Bradley, dressed in a casual polo shirt and khakis, walked with the deliberate arrogance of a man who thought the world bent to his will. He carried a whistle around his neck. Though he wasn't an official pool employee, his eyes scanned the area with an intensity that made the parents nearby instinctively pull their children closer. Devin noticed him immediately. Bradley was infamous in their neighborhood, not for heroics, but for his aggressive policing and a string of questionable incidents that never seemed to lead to discipline. Devin had had his own run-ins with the man, harsh words, veiled threats, and citations for minor infractions that other residents would have been let off with a warning. As Bradley's gaze landed on Maya, Devin's jaw tightened. He didn't like the way the officer's eyes lingered on his daughter, as if he were searching for a reason to intervene. Devin sat up straighter in his lounge chair, his muscles tensing. "Daddy, watch this!" Maya's cheerful voice pulled his attention back. She had climbed out of the pool and was standing on the edge, preparing for a jump. "I'm watching, baby," Devin called, forcing a smile to reassure her. Maya leapt into the water with a big splash, laughing as she surfaced. Devin laughed with her, but out of the corner of his eye, he noticed Bradley moving closer. Bradley made his way to the edge of the pool, where Maya was happily paddling. "Hey, kid," he said, his voice gruff. Maya paused, looking up at him with wide eyes. "Hi," she said cautiously. "You're not supposed to jump into the pool like that," Bradley said, his tone sharp. Devin stood, his protective instincts flaring. He approached the edge of the pool, his shadow falling over both of them. "Is there a problem?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. Bradley turned to face him, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Just making sure everyone follows the rules," he said, his tone laced with condescension. "We don't want any accidents, do we?" "She's a kid," Devin replied evenly. "She's just having fun. There's no need to police her." Bradley's smirk faded. "Rules are rules. If she can't follow them, maybe she shouldn't be here." Devin clenched his fists at his sides, his patience wearing thin. "She's not doing anything wrong. Why don't you back off and let her enjoy her day?" Bradley stared at him for a moment, the tension crackling between them. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, though his presence still loomed over the pool like a storm cloud. As the afternoon wore on, Maya continued to play, her earlier encounter with Bradley quickly forgotten. Devin, however, couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in his gut. He kept a close eye on the officer, who seemed to be lingering around the pool's edges, occasionally blowing his whistle at children who were running or splashing too much. Just as Devin was beginning to relax, Maya's laughter rang out again. She had made a friend, another little girl about her age, and the two were racing each other from one end of the shallow pool to the other. Suddenly, Bradley appeared again. "Hey!" he barked, pointing at Maya. "Didn't I tell you not to jump into the pool?" Maya froze, her smile fading as she turned to face him. "I didn't jump," she said softly. "I just slid in." "Don't talk back to me," Bradley snapped, his voice loud enough to draw the attention of nearby parents. Devin was on his feet in an instant. He He strode to the edge of the pool, placing himself between Bradley and Maya. "That's enough," he said, his voice low but dangerous. "You're not going to talk to my daughter like that." Bradley sneered. "Your daughter needs to learn some respect." "And you need to leave her alone," Devin shot back. The pool area had gone silent. Parents and children watched with wide eyes as the confrontation escalated. Bradley took a step closer, his chest puffed out. "You think you can tell me what to do?" "I'm telling you to stop harassing my child," Devin said, his voice unwavering. "You're out of line." For a moment, it seemed like Bradley might back down, but then he did something that made Devin's blood run cold. He grabbed Maya by the arm. "Hey!" Devin shouted, stepping forward. But Bradley had already yanked Maya toward the deeper end of the pool. "Let's see if you still want to mouth off when you're wet," he said, his tone dripping with malice. Maya screamed as Bradley dragged her toward the deep end. Parents shouted in protest, but no one dared to intervene. Devin, however, didn't hesitate. He launched himself forward, his MMA training taking over, as he closed the distance in an instant. "Let her go!" Devin roared, grabbing Bradley's arm and forcing him to release Maya. She stumbled back, coughing and crying as Devin shielded her with his body. Bradley turned on Devin, his face twisted with rage. "You just assaulted an officer," he snarled. "And you just tried to drown my daughter," Devin shot back, his voice shaking with fury. The two men stood nose to nose, the air between them crackling with tension. Devin's fists were clenched, every muscle in his body coiled like a spring. Bradley reached for his belt, but Devin was faster. With a single well-placed strike, he knocked the officer back, sending him stumbling into the shallow end of the pool. Bradley splashed into the shallow end of the pool, his face a mask of shock and humiliation. The crowd that had gathered around gasped in unison. Devin stayed where he was, standing protectively in front of Maya, his body tense and ready for what might come next. "Stay right there," Bradley barked, pulling himself up. Water dripped from his clothes as he staggered to his feet. His face was flushed with rage. "You're under arrest." "For what? Saving my daughter from you?" Devin shot back, his voice ringing with defiance. Bradley reached for his radio, but Devin took a step closer, his presence imposing. "Don't even think about it," Devin warned, his voice low and steady. "You touch that radio, and this gets a lot worse for you." The tension was electric. Parents whispered among themselves, some pulling out their phones to record the scene. Others huddled with their children, unsure whether to intervene or keep their distance. Behind Devin, Maya was trembling. Her small hands clutched the straps of her swimsuit, her wide eyes darting between her father and the officer. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she stayed rooted in place, her father's protective stance giving her a fragile sense of safety. One of the bystanders, a woman in her late 30s, approached Maya cautiously. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" she asked gently. Maya nodded, though her voice shook when she spoke. He grabbed me," she stammered. "He wouldn't let go." And the woman shot a glare at Bradley, who was still dripping wet and fuming. "I saw the whole thing," she said loudly enough for others to hear. "That man had no right to touch her." Bradley turned toward the woman, his jaw tightening. "Stay out of this, ma'am. This is official police business." "You're off duty," another voice called from the crowd. A middle-aged man holding a phone stepped forward. "I've been recording since you grabbed that little girl. You crossed a line." The energy shifted. What had been a scene of tense silence was now filled with murmurs of outrage. More parents stepped forward, forming a loose semicircle around Devin and Maya, as if shielding them from Bradley. "You can't treat people like this," one man said, his voice rising. "You think that badge makes you untouchable?" Bradley glared at the growing crowd, his frustration boiling over. "Everyone, step back," he barked. "This man assaulted a police officer, and I'm taking him into custody." Devin's laugh was bitter. "You assaulted my daughter first," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. "And you're not taking me anywhere." Bradley lunged for Devin, but Devin's training kicked in. With a sidestep and a quick pivot, Devin deflected the attack, using Bradley's momentum against him. Bradley stumbled, his footing slipping on the wet tiles. The crowd gasped as Devin moved with precision, keeping his movements controlled and defensive. He didn't throw wild punches or escalate the fight. He simply used his years of MMA training to neutralize Bradley's aggression. "Stop this!" Bradley shouted, his voice cracking with frustration as Devin caught his arm in a firm hold, twisting it just enough to immobilize him without causing harm. "I'm not your enemy," Devin said, his voice calm but firm. "But you're not hurting my daughter or anyone else today." The sound of sirens pierced the air, and moments later, 2 uniformed officers rushed into the pool area. One of them, a younger officer with a nervous expression, took in the scene, the crowd, the dripping wet Bradley, and Devin holding him at arm's length. "Let him go!" the younger officer shouted, drawing his taser. Devin released Bradley immediately, raising his hands in surrender. "I'm not resisting," he said, his voice steady. "But you need to hear what happened before you make any decisions." Bradley staggered back, his face red with fury. "Arrest him!" he demanded. "He assaulted me!" The younger officer hesitated, glancing at the crowd. Dozens of phones were still recording, and several voices rose in protest. "Check the videos!" someone shouted. "That cop grabbed a little girl." Another voice added, "He tried to drown her." The second officer, a stern-looking woman, stepped forward. "Everyone, calm down," she said, her tone commanding. She turned to Bradley. "What's going on here, Officer Bradley?" Bradley pointed at Devin. "This man attacked me. I want him in cuffs." The female officer's eyes flicked to the crowd. "Is that true?" she asked, her voice measured. "No," Devin said firmly. "I defended my daughter after he grabbed her and dragged her toward the deep end of the pool." "She's telling the truth," the woman who had spoken to Maya earlier interjected. "That man had no right to touch her." The officers exchanged a glance, clearly unsure how to proceed. The younger officer lowered his taser slightly, his gaze darting between Devin and Bradley. "Let's get statements," the female officer said finally, "from everyone." Despite the mounting evidence against Bradley, the officers followed protocol. Devin was placed in handcuffs while they sorted through the situation, a fact that drew immediate outrage from the crowd. "This is wrong," one woman shouted. "He didn't do anything wrong." Maya screamed as the handcuffs clicked shut around her father's wrists. "Daddy!" she cried, running to his side. Devin knelt down, his hands bound but his voice gentle. "It's okay, princess," he said, his eyes locked on hers. "They're just doing their job. I'll be home soon." Tears streamed down Maya's face as she clung to him. The female officer crouched down beside her, her tone softening. "Sweetheart, we're going to figure this out," she said. "I promise." Devin was led away, but not before meeting Bradley's triumphant glare. "This isn't over," Devin said quietly, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside him. News of the incident spread quickly. Within hours, videos of the confrontation had gone viral, sparking outrage across social media. Hashtags like Yaojin Justice for Maya and Yaji Bradley Must Go began trending, with calls for an investigation into the officer's actions. Maya was inconsolable. Back at home, she refused to eat or sleep, her small body racked with sobs as she clung to her grandmother, who had come to stay with her. Devin, meanwhile, sat in a holding cell, his mind racing. He knew he had done the right thing, but he also knew how these situations often played out. Without the videos, without witnesses willing to speak up, it could easily turn into his word against Bradley's. By the next morning, the incident was plastered across social media, news outlets, and community forums. Cell phone footage from multiple angles showed Officer Bradley dragging Maya toward the deep end of the pool while she screamed for her father. Another clip captured Devin stepping in, skillfully disarming Bradley without escalating the situation. In one particularly damning video, Bradley's face could be seen twisted with rage as he shouted, "Stay out of this," just before Devin intervened. The crowd's murmurs of discontent turned to outright outrage as the footage ended with Devin being led away in handcuffs. At the local police station, phones rang off the hook. Officers were inundated with calls demanding Bradley's suspension and Devin's immediate release. A protest began forming outside the building by midday, with residents holding signs that read, "Justice for Maya," and "Fire Bradley now." The footage had ignited a firestorm, drawing attention from civil rights organizations and activists. A well-known attorney, Monica Hayes, offered to represent Devin pro bono. Known for her success in high-profile police misconduct cases, Monica was a fierce advocate for justice and wasn't about to let this case slip through the cracks. Devin sat in the holding cell, his thoughts consumed with worry about Maya, He knew she was with his mother, but the image of her tear-streaked face as he was led away haunted him. The cell door opened, and Monica Hayes stepped inside. She was tall and composed, her sharp suit a stark contrast to the drab surroundings. "Mr. King," she said, extending a hand. "I'm Monica Hayes. I'll be your attorney." Devin stood and shook her hand. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "I've reviewed the footage and let me just say this," Monica began, pulling out a folder. "You did nothing wrong. The evidence is overwhelmingly in your favor. Now, we need to make sure the system doesn't fail you. Or Maya." Devin nodded, relief washing over him. "I just want to get back to my daughter," he said. Monica smiled. "We're going to make that happen." Back at the precinct, Bradley was feeling the pressure. He'd been called into the captain's office after news of the incident broke. Captain Torres, a no-nonsense leader with a deep respect for community relations, wasn't happy. "This is a disaster," Torres said, slamming a printed screenshot of a viral tweet onto his desk. "What the hell were you thinking, Bradley? Dragging a little girl into the deep end? What part of that seemed like a good idea?" Bradley crossed his arms, his face hard. "That man assaulted me, Captain. He—" "Stop!" Torres snapped. "You escalated a situation that never should have happened. Now the department is under fire, and the mayor wants answers. You're suspended, effective immediately, pending an internal investigation." Bradley's face flushed. "This is ridiculous. I've served this department for—" "And you've got a stack of complaints against you that says you've served it poorly," Torres interrupted. "Get out of my office." Thanks to Monica's swift action, Devin was released later that evening. He walked out of the police station to find a crowd of supporters waiting for him. Cheers erupted as he stepped outside, and Monica placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Let's get you home," she said, guiding him toward her car. When Devin arrived home, Maya ran into his arms, sobbing uncontrollably. "Daddy!" she cried, burying her face in his chest. "I'm here, Princess," he said, holding her tightly. "I'm not going anywhere." That night, Devin stayed up with Maya, answering her questions and trying to ease her fears. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, but he was determined to protect his daughter and fight for justice. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal preparations, media appearances, and protests. Monica filed a lawsuit against Officer Bradley and the police department, alleging excessive force, child endangerment, and racial discrimination. Devin became a reluctant figurehead in the fight for justice. While he didn't seek the spotlight, he understood the importance of speaking out. "This isn't just about me and Maya," he said during a televised interview. "It's about making sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." Maya's story resonated deeply, sparking national conversations about police accountability and the need for systemic reform. As the investigation into Bradley's actions unfolded, more disturbing details emerged. Complaints from other residents revealed a pattern of aggression and racial bias that had been swept under the rug for years. Former colleagues came forward, describing Bradley as a bully who abused his power. The weight of evidence was overwhelming. Bradley was charged with multiple counts, including assault and endangering the welfare of a child. Despite the legal victories, the trauma of the incident lingered. Maya refused to go near a pool for months, and Devin struggled with guilt for not being able to shield her completely. With Monica's encouragement, Devin and Maya began attending therapy. Slowly, they found ways to process their emotions and rebuild their sense of safety. Devin also returned to his MMA training, using it as an outlet for his anger and frustration. His gym became a sanctuary, a place where he could channel his energy into something positive. Months later, Devin and Maya stood together at a community event organized in their honor. The pool where the incident had occurred was under new management, with stricter rules about off-duty officers and a commitment to fostering a welcoming environment. As Devin looked around at the smiling faces of neighbors and supporters, he felt a renewed sense of hope. Maya, standing beside him, seemed lighter too, her laughter once again filling the air. "This isn't the end," Devin said during a brief speech, "but it's a step forward, and sometimes that's enough to keep going." The courtroom was packed, a sea of faces representing the community's outrage, media curiosity, and quiet support for Devin and Maya. The trial of Officer Bradley became more than a legal proceeding. It was a battle for accountability in a system that had failed too many times before. Monica Hayes commanded the courtroom with her presence. She stood before the jury, her voice calm but firm as she laid out the facts. "This case isn't just about a little girl being placed in harm's way," she began, locking eyes with the jury. "It's about an abuse of power. It's about a man who thought his badge gave him the right to intimidate and harm. And it's about a father who did what any parent would do, protect his child." Bradley's defense attorney, Gerald Tucker, tried to paint a different picture. He claimed that Bradley had been misunderstood, and that Devin had overreacted, escalating the situation unnecessarily. But Monica was ready. Over the next several days, she dismantled their arguments piece by piece. The courtroom fell silent as Maya was called to the stand. Dressed in a simple white dress, her small frame seemed even smaller under the weight of so many eyes. Devin sat in the gallery, his hands clenched tightly in his lap. "Can you tell us what happened that day at the pool, Maya?" Monica asked gently. Maya hesitated, her eyes darting to Devin for reassurance. He gave her a small nod, and she took a deep breath. He grabbed me," she said, her voice trembling. "He said I wasn't following the rules, but I didn't do anything wrong. Then he pulled me to the deep end, and I got scared. I thought I was going to drown." Monica's voice was steady as she asked, "Did your dad try to stop him?" "Yes," Maya said, her voice growing stronger. "My dad told him to stop, but the man wouldn't listen. My dad saved me." The defense tried to rattle her during cross-examination, but Maya held firm, her courage shining through her fear. Several bystanders who had been at the pool that day took the stand, their testimonies painting a damning picture of Bradley's actions. "I saw the whole thing," one woman said. "That officer grabbed that little girl for no reason. Devin only stepped in when it got dangerous. He didn't attack the officer. He protected his child." Another witness added, "Bradley's behavior wasn't just aggressive, it was malicious. It's clear he was targeting that family." The videos taken by onlookers were played in court, their undeniable evidence leaving the defense scrambling for counter-arguments. When Bradley took the stand, his arrogance was palpable. He claimed he had been enforcing the rules and that Devin had overreacted. Monica's cross-examination was relentless. "You've received multiple complaints about excessive force in the past, haven't you, Officer Bradley?" she asked, holding up a file of documented grievances. "I acted within my authority," Bradley replied, his tone defensive. "Authority to assault an 8-year-old child?" Monica shot back. "Or authority to escalate a situation into violence?" Bradley's silence spoke volumes. After weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as the foreperson stood to deliver the verdict. "We find the defendant, Officer Bradley, guilty on all charges." A collective sigh of relief swept through the room. Devin closed his eyes, a wave of emotion washing over him as Maya clutched his hand tightly. Outside the courthouse, supporters cheered, holding signs that read, "Justice for Maya," and "Accountability now." Devin addressed the crowd briefly, his voice filled with gratitude. "This victory isn't just for my daughter. It's for every family who's ever been hurt by injustice. Thank you for standing with us." In the months that followed, Devin and Maya began the slow process of healing. Therapy sessions helped Maya reclaim her sense of safety, and Devin learned to navigate his own feelings of guilt and anger. The community rallied around them, organizing fundraisers and events to support Maya's recovery. One of these events was a self-defense workshop led by Devin, who used his MMA expertise to teach others how to protect themselves. "Maya inspired this," Devin said during the workshop. "Her strength reminded me that even in the face of fear, we can fight back." The case sparked broader conversations about systemic issues within the local police department. Under pressure from activists and community leaders, the department implemented new policies, including mandatory de-escalation training and the creation of an independent review board for complaints against officers. Bradley's conviction also led to a statewide push for greater accountability, with lawmakers introducing legislation aimed at preventing similar incidents. 1 year after the incident, Devin and Maya returned to the community pool. It had been renovated, with new safety measures in place and a more inclusive atmosphere. Maya hesitated at the edge of the pool, her toes gripping the warm tiles. Devin knelt beside her, his voice gentle. "You don't have to do this if you're not ready, Princess." Maya looked up at him, her eyes shining with determination. "I want to," she said. With a deep breath, she stepped into the water, the cool embrace washing away her fear. Devon watched with pride as she paddled confidently, her laughter echoing through the air. As the sun set over the pool, Devon realized that while the scars of the past might never fully fade, the future was theirs to shape. Together, they had faced the worst and come out stronger.